2025 has been another great year for video games, though you wouldn't know that from the Game Awards.
3. Flare Obscure Expedition 33.
Game of the Year.
Flare Obscure Expedition 33 from Sandfall Interactive.
I think that's a shame, since there have indeed been a ton of great AAA, but also indie releases, like Ghost of Yotei, Clover Pit, Chronos: A New Dawn, and even stuff like a game about digging a hole. And it's a shame that it's really hard to celebrate this much variety in a medium. Like every year, I'm once again making a list of my favorite games I've played this year, and in a first for my Game of the Year list, the games I will be talking about today all released this year. Yay! I hope to highlight a tiny bit of the variety that consistently gets pumped out, and do keep in mind that all of these are just my personal opinion. So, for the 4th year in a row, let's get ranking. As soon as the Nintendo Switch 2 was announced, everybody's mind seemed to jump to two things: a new Mario Kart and a 3D Mario. After all, it's been 8 years since the release of Mario Odyssey, longer than the time between Super Mario Galaxy 2 and Odyssey. Of course, we didn't get a new 3D Mario, instead we got a reveal that shocked everyone. A brand new 3D Donkey Kong from the Mario Odyssey team. This was supposed to be the system seller? Donkey Kong Bonanza? Before long, the game was out, and early Switch 2 adopters got a chance to play it. Many called it a must-have title, some even went as far as to call it a masterpiece. While I myself did have fun with the title, it's far from a masterpiece. The bosses are far too easy, and I beat most of them in under 2 minutes. While destroying the entire level is fun, it limits the level design that can be pulled off. The only way that you can implement a bit of a more thoughtful level design is by adding a smaller goal within. This is where these challenge doors come in. Some of these are incredible thought out mini levels, while others just feel like filler content. This problem is worsened by the fact that the reward is usually a banana or Banandium gem, as the game calls it. These can also be found scattered around the level, and you get them for almost anything you do, really. Mario Odyssey had a similar problem with its moons, and it's wild that the developers haven't tried to fix this specific issue. The easiest solution would have been to add another reward to the game and tie it to progression, since you technically only need the Banandium gems to upgrade DK. There's definitely more problems with the game I could talk about, but I still can't deny the amount of whimsy I felt while playing it. Each of the abilities you unlock are incredibly fun and useful in their own way, and I can't deny that I was blown away by the final boss and that whole section. Genuinely incredible stuff. All the levels are unique in their own way, and most of them have a fun mechanic, even if some are way shorter than others. I was also a big fan of the music, and there are a lot of standout tracks. Even if I do have some problems with this game, I still liked, if not adored, most things about it. So while my issue did drag it down a bit, it's still a great title worth checking out if you own a Switch 2. Before Sword of the Sea, I have never played a game made by these devs before. I heard great things about Journey and Abzu, but haven't gotten around to playing them yet. Sword of the Sea released day and date on PlayStation Plus, so I decided to give it a go, and I was very pleasantly surprised. The art direction was sublime, and it just seemed like a serene experience. After playing it, I can indeed confirm that it is. It doesn't overstay its welcome, since it only takes around 2 hours to beat, and always gives you new content and abilities to play with during that time. I especially like the part where you ride a shark, because I just watched Chainsaw Man movie, and when I played Sword of the Sea and the shark section arrived, it reminded me of Beam. There's not really that deep of a story to speak of here. Something I heard is better in Journey, and its only side content is just collect a certain amount of gold several times over. After the amount needed for the next upgrade reached 1000, I gave up on these power-ups. All you really get is some new tricks you can pull off anyway. At least that's what I got from the first few I actually bothered to get. Riding through the desert, mountains, caves, and more is just a chill experience, and I like that the game just keeps throwing stuff at you. What surprised me was that the music didn't really stand out to me. From what I've heard about Journey and Abzu, music was half of the experience of those games, but maybe my expectations were too high, or it's just not to my taste. Who knows? There's not much more that I could say, really. It's just a really calm experience that's all about the vibes. Definitely a game worth setting a few hours aside for.
We sure cause a lot of explosions.
Aside from Donkey Kong Bonanza, Split Fiction was probably the most I disagreed with on the general consensus about the game. Don't get me wrong, it's remarkable how this game manages to keep throwing new stuff at the wall and how well some of it sticks. In my experience, however, a few aspects really didn't work and dragged the game down for me. For one, I thought that one character, that being Mio, was consistently more fun to play than Zoe. I would say that it could be my personal bias, but the friend I was playing the game with agreed. Zoe was definitely less fun apart from one instance. It often felt like one player had the character that had more benefits progression-wise, while the other was just more fun to play. I also think that some of the levels stretch a bit too long for my taste, and I found Zoe's levels to be consistently more fun and creative than Mio's, and I don't even like fantasy settings. At least the smaller sections within the levels provide some much needed change of pace. The pig section and the dentist section were some personal highlights for me. What disappointed me the most though was definitely the story. The fact that I had to look up Zoe's name should tell you everything you need to know. I could easily see where the story was going from a mile away and found all the characters boring and predictable, a far cry from It Takes Two. The villain was especially bad. It's been a while since I've seen such a two-dimensional antagonist with no motivations whatsoever apart from just being evil for the love of the game, which can definitely work, but not in this case. With a bit of tuning up, I can see the potential that the story had, a message about stealing ideas for the sake of making AI slop and getting rich off it. It's very topical, and judging by how bad the state of the creative world is right now, maybe we could have looked back in a few years' time and said, you know, Split Fiction predicted all this. All the story needed was a better villain, deeper characters, and some better pacing, so it doesn't feel like our characters went from hating each other to being besties in the span of a few minutes. I also understand that this is hard to pull off given the limited time frame that the game has to tell its story, but some better integration of the narrative into gameplay would have gone a long way. Ideally, a completely new ending would be required as well, because the one we got was really bad in my opinion. The gameplay was really well executed for the most part though, with every level bringing a ton of new stuff to the table, and I guess in the end that's the most important part. Most of it doesn't overstay its welcome, and when it does, then at least you have frequent side content to fall back to. Another aspect that I really liked, but don't mention often, was the technical performance. I played it on a Nintendo Switch too, and frequently marveled at what such a compact machine could pull off. I never imagined such a thing possible. I think I am being a bit too harsh on the game, so I'll leave it on the following notes. Split Fiction is an amazing game that deserves praise in a lot of aspects, even if it does have some minor shortcomings. Especially if you have a friend or a loved one to play with, I would encourage you to do so. It's still so rare to see such a high quality experience made specifically with two players in mind, even though we are seeing more of them these days, and 2026 looks very promising in that aspect. It's definitely no It Takes Two, but then again, not many games can be. In the Donkey Kong Bonanza section, I mentioned how everybody thought of a new Mario Kart when they thought of a successor to the Nintendo Switch, and they were proven right once the console was revealed, as you could see some snippets of gameplay in the trailer, and I was ecstatic. This was the first brand new Mario Kart game in over 10 years after all, and it looked gorgeous. Animations looked so lively and the graphics so crisp, needless to say, I couldn't wait. We got some new glimpses here and there, along with a direct that didn't really reveal all too much new information, and eventually the game was out. I booted it up and what I saw was pretty good. Was it the grandiose return for the series that I had hoped for? Not really, but then again, it was almost impossible to live up to the absolute unit that was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with the Booster Course Pass. World brings a lot of new ideas to the series, such as an open world with all the courses being interconnected and a whole slew of new movement mechanics. When the first wave of the Booster Course Pass arrived, I remember a lot of people thinking that Paris Promenade, that course and Ninja Hideaway were a glimpse into the future of the franchise, and to an extent that turned out to be true, with tracks like Peach Beach or Crown City having a lot of varied routes each round. In a lot of ways, it's also just the same old Mario Kart, but with skill being more important than ever. Items still play a big part of the game, but the tricks that you can do now add a lot of potential shortcuts, and people have already figured out a ton of impressive techniques, like this one on Question Mark Block Ruins, which blew me away the first time I saw it. That said, there are a lot of negative aspects to this package, the open world being one of them. There isn't that much to do apart from driving around and completing P missions or collecting Peach medallions. The reward for getting these are just a bunch of barely noticeable stickers, and if you dare to complete all of the side content, some yellow numbers, yippee. The tracks being connected also allowed Nintendo to seamlessly connect them all in a Grand Prix, at the cost of boring intermissions between tracks, which often are just a straight line. If there was something more substantial in the open world or some sort of story mode, I can totally see this working. Imagine completing a race in the Mushroom Kingdom Grand Prix and earning a new character or card for that, or hell, unlocking unlocking an entire course. You can still have the collectathons at the end of it all, but at least there would be points to the open world. Even though there are a ton of ways you could improve the open world, I still enjoyed what we got. Driving through the Mushroom Kingdom with an amazing soundtrack that remixes a lot of old themes from the franchise was an experience and a half, and the P-switches added some variety. In the end, even after seeing how disconnected the different aspects of the game are from each other, I still really enjoyed Mario Kart World. I guess it's just very, very difficult to mess up Mario Kart. The final Switch 2 game on this list might come as a surprise, that being Kirby Air Riders. I only ever played a few rounds of the original, so I didn't really know what to expect. I sure as hell didn't expect an ADHD obliteration simulator. The gameplay in Air Riders can be so hectic at times that it's almost impossible to keep up with the sheer amount of things on screen, especially in City Trial mode, which happens to be my favorite. Surprisingly, I like almost all of the modes in Kirby Air Riders. Some more than others, of course, but I see the value in each of them. I originally thought that Air Ride would be a mode a la Mario Kart, just more hectic. But, although it's similar in concept, it's very different in execution, with your character and machine selection playing a crucial role in how you play a course, which are all beautifully designed, might I add, except for one maybe. It's especially interesting how some machines are highly more preferable on certain tracks than others is a crucial part of getting better at the game. The music in all of these tracks goes so hard as well, the waterfall one being my favorite. The music of this game in general is simply sublime, and it definitely is one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. Top Ride might be my second favorite mode. It's a much smaller scale version of Air Ride with different controls, and a wide selection of miniature courses. I enjoyed trying to get through all of these as fast as I could, and the quick nature of these rounds makes them never overstay their welcome, and they're incredibly addictive because of it. The maps here are also very pretty, and all have their own personality. I also just like how original a top-down view like this is. City Trial is, as I've already mentioned, my favorite mode. I love the gameplay loop of collecting upgrades for your machine and competing in a minigame of your choice. It can definitely get a bit chaotic, but that's something I like about it. It's different. I would have liked to see another map or a bit of a better balance minigame-wise, but it's decent as it is. Rick is definitely best boy. The last and my least favorite game mode is Road Trip. It's a mode a la World of Light in Smash Ultimate, where you have to basically play through a bunch of City Trial minigames and steadily upgrade your machine, and even beat some bosses along the way. Every few levels a cutscene plays, and these have some really good production quality. The story isn't anything to write home about though. I also find it a bit baffling how you can just unlock the final course in the game without ever touching Road Trip. A decision on the one hand I appreciate, since I don't like the game mode myself, but on the other hand takes away from this game mode's existence even more. So while I do have my problems with the game, and especially Road Trip, overall I still really liked Kirby Air Riders and what it tried to do. Definitely not my favorite kart racer of all time, but one I will still return to for a while to come, since there isn't anything else quite like it. Death Stranding 2 is a game that plays things a bit too safe for my taste. After I finished the game, I actually started writing a video on it, but I was never happy with how it was turning out, and eventually I didn't have any more time to properly finish it. My main problem with the game is that it felt too formulaic in comparison to Hideo Kojima's other sequels. Metal Gear Solid is such an interesting series to analyze, in part of because how different every entry is. MGS2 subverted expectations of what a sequel should be, MGS3 perfected the stealth gameplay and gave us an emotional story, and MGS5 gave us a huge sandbox with a seemingly infinite amount of gameplay options. Oh yeah, and MGS4 is there too.
Liquid!
Death Stranding 2 just feels too much like the first one. The story is, in a lot of ways, too similar to the first. You have to connect the country. Again, there's a weird ghost of the past in a war zone. Again, there's BTs everywhere. Again, there's enemy camps you have to avoid or take out. Again, Higgs is here. Again, I could keep going, but you get the point. Yes, all of these aspects here are refined and brought to the next level, and you could argue that's exactly what I should have expected from a sequel, but I didn't expect this from a Kojima sequel. It just feels a bit too been there done that. All while a lot of the aspects I liked from the first game, like the thrilling BT stealth sections, are almost entirely absent here, and the new stuff is either just a variation of already existing content or incredibly underused. The weather, a big part of the promotional material, was a non-issue apart from one mission, and you can barely use one of the coolest new vehicles unless you have to backtrack to a part of the map that you already unlocked. The story definitely has its moments, but just like the first game, I don't think it works if you look too deeply into it. The BB twist didn't work for me because I thought it was so obvious that you should have already known it and it was just implied. But no, it's treated like a big revelation. Some of the emotional moments definitely hit, but it's not enough for me. So why is the game still so high up on the list? When I climbed up all the way to the top of the highest mountain in the game, Low Roar soundtrack playing in the background, and I saw that gorgeous moon rendered with some of the most realistic graphics I've ever seen in a game, it finally clicked. Honestly, it's a feeling I still can't quite pinpoint, but it's a very rare feeling to have in a game. It's still a Kojima game through and through. It's the only time a AAA game has felt indie to me, with so much of the creator's vision and DNA being in the game. So while it's a mixed bag, its highs are high enough to warrant the number 5 spot on my Game of the Year list. Speaking of moons though, Skate Story is a difficult game to talk about because, in part, it's all about the vibes. I could explain the concept or what I think makes the game special, but I can't fully show you why this game works so well for me. It's just one of those experiences. It has a unique blend of feeling almost like a high-budget cinematic experience, but with all of the charm, boldness, and jankiness of an indie game. In Skate Story, you're a demon made out of glass and pain, and you have to skate through the underworld and eat 7 moons to fulfill your contract with the devil and get your soul back. See, I told you it would sound insane. Anyway, the skating mechanics are insanely satisfying to pull off, and you keep unlocking new techniques the more you progress up until the very end of the game. All of the mechanics introduced feel necessary and always have a use case, even if it doesn't seem so at the beginning. Pulling off a chain of tricks and watching that point number go up is an incredible feeling, and I love how intuitive the controls are. The cast of supporting characters you meet along your journey are such a strange mix of scuffed 3D models, yet so perfectly fitting to the tone of the game, and that goes for every part of it really. Everything has a tiny feeling of jank to it, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The music is such an interesting selection of psychedelic, electronic, and atmospheric tracks. It invokes a feeling unlike any other. The only real complaint I have is about a bug that I had where I got soft locked in chapter 3 of the game and had to start over, but it wasn't a big issue since you can clear that part in around an hour if you know what you're doing. Hell, the entire game is pretty short, clocking in at around 6 to 7 hours for a normal playthrough. It's definitely not a game for everyone, but I loved every second of Skate Story so much more than I expected, and the only reason why I really played it was because it was on PlayStation Plus. I don't know if I would have picked it up otherwise, since I was very unsure if I would enjoy it, since games like Skate 3 didn't speak to me. It really just proves the importance of trying a game out you think you might not enjoy. The same thing happened to me with Persona 3 Reload last year, and Persona became one of my favorite franchises. There is another game on this list, however, that was one of those I know nothing about this, yet I want to play it type of games for me, and that game is...
You should never have come. You're only going to make things worse for everyone.
No. She chose to come. I didn't make the rules between you two.
If you're into gaming whatsoever, it's almost safe to say that you've heard of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. It won pretty much every award it was eligible for at the Game Awards and tore the community apart with one of the most controversial ending choices in recent years. By the way, there's a clear choice here and it's obvious which one it is. Expedition 33's ending is a literacy test, and if you can't see which ending is intended to be the good one, you have failed it. You can like the other ending, but there's one clear good ending here. The higher up the list I go, the more there is to say about a given game. I noticed this last year starting with Metaphor ReFantazio, and this year I already saw it with Skate Story, but it's blatantly obvious here. There's so much to talk about with Expedition 33, and I don't want to make this video too much longer compared to last year's, so I'm sorry if I couldn't talk about something you wanted me to talk about. I'm focusing on the main points only. The combat system in this game is so refreshing, especially for a turn-based RPG. I think one of the more popular comparisons to draw would be Persona, since its combat was always praised for being very clean. But while Persona kept getting more stylish with every entry without adding more substance, Clair Obscur decided not only make the combat look good, but also add a parry mechanic, adding an extra layer of depth. And while a game like Persona would give you a new party member and give them a specific element and call it a day, here every party member feels distinct and useful in their own way, almost to an unbalanced extent at times, and I really wish that at least the final boss scaled with you so you couldn't kill it in 5 hits. The depths of the combat aren't the only thing that makes this game so special though. Its music, world, art direction, and story are what carries it over the top. Its soundtrack is so good that I still listen to some of the tracks to this day, especially the battle themes. The art direction is stunning, with every part of the world actually feeling like some sort of painting and every sub-area having its own identity. I think the second area was my favorite overall. Finally, there's the story. Probably the most controversial part. While I do have complaints about it, regarding the big twist for example and what it does to the characters in my opinion, for the most part I think it works. Most of the characters' actions make sense and they all get enough screen time. That is if you do a lot of side quests, because if you just focus on the main story, some of the characters will feel heavily underdeveloped. I could keep talking about this game for a lot longer, but I think I'll try to summarize my thoughts as concisely as I can, and if I ever want to talk about it some more, I'll come back to it. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 feels like a true modernization of an old school turn-based RPG a la Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, and that genre has, in a lot of ways, felt like it was stuck in the past for a long time. So for that aspect alone, I think this game deserves all the praise it's gotten. Now, with all the praise I gave this game, would you believe me if I told you there are in fact 2 other games I liked more, and that one of them is a puzzle game? No, your eyes do not deceive you. I indeed just put a puzzle game about falling blocks above one of the most acclaimed games of all time, but I have my reasons for it. Luminous Arise. It's the newest game from Enhance, the developers of Res Infinite and Tetris Effect, with the latter being one of my favorite games I started playing back in 2022 and continue to play to this day, though nowadays it's mostly become a form of stress relief for me. Luminous Arise feels like a true spiritual successor to Tetris Effect in all the right ways. Its music selection's still stellar, its backdrops more gorgeous than ever, and its particle effects more ambitious than ever. Before Arise, I only played one other Luminous game, that being Electronic Symphony on the PS Vita, and I remember thinking that the game was okay, but I was a bit confused by what the best strategies could be. With Luminous Arise, okay, I'll stop using that joke now. I noticed that the more I played, the more patterns I began to recognize to place the blocks in, and it reminded me of the first time I played Tetris. I still have a long way to go and I'm nowhere near what you would call good, but even with my lack of skill, this is still my second favorite game of the year. There's something so enthralling about the combination of a puzzle game mixed with some of the most gorgeous backdrops and effects I have ever seen in any game, let alone VR. One of the songs in this game even had me close to tears, and experiencing such a strong emotion was such a wonderful experience that I will never forget. I would highly recommend playing this game in VR with headphones on if you can. It really is one of the most immersive gaming experiences you can have, and I still can't believe I'm saying all this about a puzzle game. This is probably the game I would consider to be the closest to flawless this year. It accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do and does it in one of the most unique ways a puzzle game can. I actually debated for a long time between this and a different game for my number 1 spot, but there was one game this year that impressed me more than any of the other games I have discussed so far, and that game is over 20 years old now.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill.
Do you love her?
No, nothing like that.
Do you hate her?
For 10 years, we lived and died together. You couldn't possibly understand.
And you think you can kill her now?
Fear in my heart, but you're so supreme.
Last year, I caught up on a franchise called Persona, playing through all the modern games. Well, this year, I saw that a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 was going to be releasing soon, so what better time to give this franchise a shot? It's been on my backlog for a while after all, and these are supposed to be some of the best games of all time. So I started on my journey with Metal Gear Solid 1, and I couldn't get through more than half of it. The movement felt outdated, the progression complicated, the enemies obnoxious, and the controls unintuitive. But the story was really good, so I watched a playthrough of it on YouTube, and I can appreciate the game as a product of its time. Metal Gear Solid 2 felt way better to play though, and I got through that with only one little hiccup along the way. And this game has the best story out of any game I've played this year for sure. All those, Metal Gear Solid 2 predicted all this memes are unironically true. I finished this game in February and wanted to play the third one so bad, but I patiently awaited the remake. And on August 26th, it finally arrived. I got the deluxe edition of the game, downloaded it, and what followed was the most satisfying stealth gameplay I have ever experienced. I was never a big fan of stealth games, but here it just worked. The story, while over the top at times, was a wild ride for sure. It never went as deep as Metal Gear Solid 2, but instead chose to lean into emotional aspects way more, making you think about topics like honor, loyalty, and even the meaning of love. Yes, believe it or not, Snake here actually has a heart of gold. The set pieces are some of the best the industry has to offer, and it's almost unbelievable that Kojima pulled this off in 2004. Of course, the classic over-the-top Kojima shenanigans are here too, and they're as over-the-top as always, and sometimes I wish they weren't, but it's undeniably a part of the charm of Metal Gear, and wouldn't be the same without these silly moments thrown in. It almost feels like the game is serious, but trying not to take itself too seriously, if that makes sense. This game, of course, houses some of the most iconic sounds, lines, and moments in gaming history, and that was definitely a big part of why I enjoyed it as much as I did. The soundtrack here is also perfectly fitting of an espionage thriller, like that iconic opening song performed by Cynthia Harrell, and of course the ladder sequence. Every moment from the first Halo jump to the last cutscene feels like an event. And that final reveal really is an emotional gut punch that makes so much sense after you actually think about it, that it's almost impossible to understand how you didn't see it coming. The villains are some of the most over-the-top things I've seen, and yet somehow they fit in perfectly with the Cold War era story. It's insane, and I'm going insane trying to explain all this. And I know that people have been saying this for the last 20 years, and that this is pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the original, and yet, just because of the fact that I personally experienced this game for the first time, I'm going to have to call it my Game of the Year 2025.